What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Big things happening over at Yahoo today. We'll get to them in just a moment. But first, I'm Dave Loughran on Twitter at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D, joined by, we got an awesome cast here today. Different one, mixing it up a little bit. You got no Adam, but you do have Rinpack at Rinpack on Twitter and Alex Baker, Awesemo himself at Awesemo DFS. Alex, what's going on, man? Different setting, different digs over there.
Yeah, what's up, guys? I walked out and booked a trip down to Charlotte for this DraftKings event, so I'm definitely looking forward to throwing back a few G&Ts on the DK budget after this.
What's going on, Rinpack?
I'm doing well. Not lucky enough to make it out to Charlotte, but in a different setting myself as well.
Yeah, well, where are you at?
I'm in Chicago right now. Yep.
You're at the Awesemo office.
Yep, at Awesemo HQ right now.
That's right. Yeah, out there in Chicago. Maybe I'll make it out there one day. All these years, I still haven't made it out there. How about that? I made it out there for the FanVice get-together, though. Remember that?
R.I.P. FanVice, am I right?
Well, I'd say we moved on to bigger, better things, but yes, absolutely. And FanVice was a lot of fun for sure. Like, we had a blast. That was an awesome meetup for sure. But you know what? We all landed in good spots. We're happy to be here. Happy to have all of you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet, and subscribe to the channel. That is the biggest, easiest, freest way to help us out here and help us continue to grow this channel. Keep putting out free content. And well, if you hate it, click unsubscribe. Forget about us forever. You'll never have to hear from us again, but I don't think you'll want to do that. And if you want to join, hit that join button down below. See all the perks that are involved in becoming a member here on the YouTubes. All right, guys, we got one game to talk about, the Showdown slate between Memphis and Golden State. The Warriors, 4.5-point favorites in this one, 221 total. Ryan, I'll say this much before we get into this game, because we're going to go neck deep. We're going to break down everything possible on every side for DraftKings, for Yahoo, for FanDuel, you name it. We'll get you prepped for everything across the board heading into this 9 p.m. lock, and then Live Before Lock comes right after us. But the Golden State Lakers game was by far the best play-in game we've seen. It's not even close. Nothing comes close. It was fantastic from start to finish. What are your expectations for this game? Do you see and obviously it's a tough question to ask, but do you think this is one where Memphis can keep this competitive and we get, 40 plus minutes from most starters?
I hope so. I mean, competitive games is what we root for in DFS, but the Lakers game, Warriors game was absolutely sensational. The NBA won. It was one of the highest viewed games ever in terms of basketball games watched for a long time. But today, this is really interesting. This team played in a similar situation. It was not do or die, but winner gets the 8 seed, which is pretty relevant implications. They played on Sunday in the regular season finale, and we saw a lot of starters play a ton of minutes. And there was been some rotation changes since then, but I do expect a lot of the starters, barring any foul trouble, to play upwards of 40 plus minutes today. I mean, it's do or die. They got to win to advance.
Yeah, there is no point in resting your starters. Alex, I'm a Tulsa dog. Our boy always in chat says, best trio on DFS, Alex the GOAT, Rinpack the cerebral one, and Laffy who could sell Rinpack a Buckeye banner to fly at the mansion in Ann Arbor.
Nice.
What, Alex, first initial thoughts about this game? we're not even starting on either side, but just looking at this, anything stand out to you from a roster construction standpoint? And we can jump into a little bit of Showdown strategy here as well. I know this is something that you've really dug into since DraftKings came out with it and FanDuel and Yahoo adopted it over the years. It's something that you've had some success with as well, but it's unfamiliar to a lot of people as well.
Yeah, I mean, Showdown is all about strategy because there's such a limited number of players that it's pretty easy to identify the best plays on any given slate. So the mistakes people make playing Showdown as far as like EV are a lot different than your classic slates. So you have to really change up your game for these single game and when we get 2-game slates, those as well. Today's slate is interesting because Steph Curry is just like far and away the best fantasy producer on either team. And that kind of creates an interesting dilemma because everyone's going to be on him at captain, MVP, or megastar on Yahoo. And it's going to be tough to see him not being the highest scoring player. So we got to figure out the best way to approach that.
And yeah, Rimpack, just similarly, when it comes to NFL showdowns, you're trying to, you always hear people say, like, you're trying to tell a story in the sense that if you have a kicker, both kickers in your lineup, you probably don't want 3 wide receivers. If you have a quarterback in the captain spot, you probably don't want 0 of his pass catchers in the utility spots. With basketball, is there anything you're looking to do in that respect? Like, is there any way to build a lineup that works with each other, or are you just playing what you believe are the best players with the best leverage or the best possible opportunity to be in the optimal lineup compared to what you're looking at in terms of ownership?
Yeah, so out of any of the showdown sports or single game of sports, I feel like NBA is probably duped the most in terms of lineups that are just duped out there. And the thing about showdown NBA and single game NBA, the duped lineups are usually really, really good lineups because median projections are really well done across any site or our site, anywhere you go to. So to tell that story, it's definitely possible. And you can get really deep into telling the story. Do we, for example, let's do Dillon Brooks. We expect Dillon Brooks to guard Steph Curry again today. And he did a sensational job on him. The problem, what happened with him is he got in foul trouble and he couldn't finish the game on the game on Sunday. And I expect him to exert a lot of his focus on the defensive end, where I'm not really that interested targeting him today on my lineups, just because I know he's going to play the minutes, but I just feel like his sole focus today is going to be finding a way to slow down Steph Curry.
Okay. Yeah. And there's a lot of different storylines that you can get to. Let's jump into it right now. But before we do, you got to check out the Express Pass promo that we have going on right now. It's specifically catered to you that wants to check out Showdown, that wants to improve your game when it comes to Showdown. Here's what it is. Usually the NBA Express Pass is $4.95 a week, right? $4.95 a week includes all of our tools for Showdown, everything, projections, ownership, you name it. It also has the big board, the lineup builder, the ownership rankings, not just for Showdown, but in general. If you use the promo code PLAYIN, or just the simplest way is go to awesemo.com/promos, and then you'll just click it. You don't have to type in this wild promo that has a hyphen in it. I know. All you do is go to Awesemo. Did you create that, Rimpack?
It was created with our team. It was an event specific promo. We saw the official way the NBA spelled it out, so we did play hyphen in. So yeah, that's what ended up happening.
All right. Well, anyway, you don't have to type that in. If you want to, it's PLAY-IN. It'll get you to the same place, or awesemo.com/promos. Just click that button. You'll get the first week for $4.95, the second week entirely free. So 2 weeks of Awesemo NBA Express Pass for the price of one. After today, it's over. Today is the last day. And it's not just Showdown slates like on a night like tonight or yesterday. These are Showdown slates where 2 days ago you had 2 games, but then you had the $300,000 prize pools on DraftKings for the Showdown there. It is included. Any Showdown slate that you've got coming up, we have the tools for it, and they're yours. $4.95 for 2 weeks. Use that promo code. Go to awesemo.com/promos. All right, boys, let's do this. We got plenty of time to make it happen. Alex, I'll go to you first. We'll start with the Memphis Grizzlies. Jonas Valanciunas coming off a huge game, absolutely dismantled San Antonio last game. This is what he does. He's an extraordinarily polished offensive player. He's an excellent rebounder, and he only averages 28 minutes per game. He's played 36 minutes against Golden State and then 38 minutes against San Antonio. If Joval played another 38 minutes tonight, it wouldn't be shocking. So what are we doing with someone like him who is extraordinarily good, huge double-double upside, also been blocking shots at an exceptional clip, but now you're paying a real premium for him if you want to get him into lineups against the top 5 defense?
Yeah, Joval is always an interesting fantasy option because of how good his fantasy production is on a permanent basis. Just really good usage and rebounding. Rebounding. I don't know how I came up with that. Anyway, the thing is, he's the quintessential example of someone that's good in fantasy basketball, but not someone that wins you basketball games, because that old school center that plays near the basket really just doesn't help the rest of your players on your team. So I do see the 37 minutes he's played in the last couple of games that I'm a little bit nervous about him getting that every single playoff game, adding in the potential of foul trouble as well. So I think he's someone where, great fantasy play, but I don't mind being a little bit under on Jonas Valanciunas, because I see some ways this could go away from him in this game.
Yo, the real Memphis Grizzlies account in chat right now says, who's rolling with us tonight? How about that, Ryan? No bullshit. I'm dead serious.
What?
Yeah, we got the Memphis Grizzlies in chat right now. Look, I think it's a competitive game. I don't think Ryan's the one that just said he thinks they lose by 50. No, nobody said that. That's pretty cool, though. Yeah, get Ja and Jonas in here, too. But, Ryan, in all seriousness, when you look at Joval, everything we just talked about, like, the guy is an outright stud when he gets the minutes. He never got him in Toronto. Josh was shocked that he's just turned 29 years old on this morning's strategy show. He does everything well, and he's got a considerable height advantage out there, particularly if you're not running Kevon Looney for 31 minutes and you're sticking Dre at the 5. Great defender, but what do you do in a rebounding standpoint if you're the Golden State Warriors tonight and Joval's playing 38 minutes?
Yeah, so the thing about Jonas Valanciunas, last game we saw Kevon Looney get up to 31 minutes in this Memphis matchup, and I expect Looney just to be out there as much as Valanciunas is out there, just to try to control him. He'll have his hands full with Valanciunas, but Looney. The defense has improved so much for Golden State after Wiseman left. Looney got in the rotation in terms of getting more minutes. But I still think Valanciunas is in a solid spot where if he stays out of foul trouble and he finds his way to play 38-plus minutes, man, he's one of those sneaky megastar options where he's going to be low-owned compared to Steph Curry, your MVP position on FanDuel. So I like going to Valanciunas in terms of contrarian options. I do think he has a huge upside in this matchup as well.
Yeah, me too. And I think we could talk a lot about how that impacts Kevon Looney on the other side of this game. We'll do that when we get to the Warriors. But Alex, I think the most I just saw that comment from you. The most fascinating spot to me is Ja Morant today. You look at our ownership projections, and my God, this guy is getting snubbed from an ownership standpoint. Now, do I get it in the sense that there are a lot of other good players like Curry in the captain spot, Joval in the captain spot, sure, Dre in the captain spot. But as it stands right now, Ja Morant's projected for 5% captain spot ownership on DraftKings. That is pretty remarkable when you think about what his ceiling is. Now, his floor is also considerably lower than most guys at that price point. But is there an edge to getting to Ja Morant today in the captain? And don't sugarcoat your answer just because now you know the account is in the chat.
So, I think Ja Morant is a great option. It's hard to call out any one option on a slate as a good or bad captain. But let's look at the pricing. I guess the one thing is he just isn't quite as good a fantasy player as Steph Curry, and that might be the big comparison. For context, Steph has averaged 51 fantasy points a game over the year. Ja's averaged 36. Now both of them will be playing more minutes here, and I'm not sure the 3K price difference really justifies that difference in production. So he's not the top option by any means, but definitely someone in the mix. The only question is I feel like going to a cheaper guy at captain is also kind of an option on DraftKings or on FanDuel. Maybe you can gamble more and put Ja Morant in the MVP or star.
Yeah, and we'll talk about getting some cheaper options in, and then kind of loading up in the utility on top price guys. Akeem Gadsden, welcome to the team, brother. I missed that earlier. Ryan, where do you stand on Ja Morant today? Because I think this is kind of one of the most intense parts of figuring out where to go with lineups today, just given his ownership and his salary.
I think Ja Morant, obviously, it's a one-game slate. He could put up that monster upside. And going to what Alex said, I think if you're building a bunch of lineups, if you're maxing out the FanDuel one or even the Yahoo one, I think throwing in a few Ja Morant megastar lineups, that alone will make your lineup very different. And we've seen Morant have huge upside games. I know he's kind of like, he hasn't shown those huge upside games like he had as a rookie. And obviously he was hurt with that ankle injury. I think he came back a little too early in the season, but there were some big games down the stretch he would have. And I think he's going to play 40 plus minutes, and he's going to have to ball up for this Memphis team to advance. So I don't mind Morant, but I do think I prefer Valanciunas as a better option today compared to Morant.
Okay. Yeah. Over on Yahoo, where they've got the 10K single game baller tonight, that already filled. That filled super quick. So they decided to do a $5,000 one as well. Definitely recommend you check that out and get in on the Awesemo sponsored $1,000 free roll if you haven't done that yet either. There's just a ton of reasons to do that right now, to play over there. Most importantly, though, the fact that if you use the promo code Awesemo10, AWESEMO10, you will get 2,000 YSRPs, baby, those Yahoo Sports rewards points. That'll get you into any $10 contest or less. When you do that, all you have to do is deposit $5 or more. So deposit $5 or more and you get $10. So if you deposit 5, you get 10. It's a win-win right there. Throw it in the contest, win some money, make that back. Use the promo code Awesemo10, Awesemo10. Get in that $1,000 free roll, get in that overflow contest because the other one filled up so quickly, and make it happen. Yeah, no reason not to over there. But yeah, Ryan, over on Yahoo, some of the prices, some of these guys are really inexpensive, and it's easy to get, say, Curry and Morant and even Joval into a lineup if you want, because there are a few really discounted players down there at minimum salary. You can't really say the same about that on DraftKings or FanDuel outside of someone like Michael Mulder. But I want to know where you're at on Jaren Jackson Jr. today, who is notorious for getting himself into early foul trouble, but also a very proficient per minute fantasy producer when he's on the court.
Yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. is the enigma. He can't keep his hands to himself. He has that tremendous foul rate where he just keeps fouling people nonstop. He is concerning to me. We saw last game he didn't close in San Antonio, and pretty much a huge game, a winner go home game for them. I believe he didn't close, so he's a question mark. But if Jaren Jackson Jr. somehow gets going, obviously he's coming back from injury. We've seen that minutes limit pretty much evaporating. He's playing 30 plus minutes now. If he gets going, he was playing well in that matchup to start that game against Golden State. He's an okay option. I'm just concerned that he didn't close last game in San Antonio. I'm a little cautious, but I think if you want to come in just under the field, I think you'll be just fine. I don't think you need to be well over the field to love Jaren Jackson Jr. tonight.
How about you, Alex?
I like Jaren Jackson a lot. I think the foul trouble you mentioned kind of makes his projections look bad, because when you average 6 fouls per 36,
that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's like twice of what I'd consider a high rate. So,
and real quick, he had 2 fouls in the first quarter after 6 minutes, came back to start the second, had his third foul 4 minutes in, so he didn't finish the rest of the quarter, and then he had the fourth foul, or fourth and fifth fouls not long after that. So you have to assume. You know what? I'm sorry. That was I had the Golden State game pulled up. My fault. But either way, a lot of foul trouble potential with this guy. That's my fault.
Oh, no worries. Yeah. I mean, I think he can average in the high 20s with a foul rate like that. And the question is, will they want him out there over the other guys on the team? And I think the answer has been yes. He's getting big minutes over the home stretch in the season. Obviously, like a super high draft pick that's just been off and on injured for most of his career so far, but his play so far this year has been pretty solid. And I also think like there is some potential leverage playing Jaren Jackson Jr. As a pivot from Joval, because Jaren Jackson Jr. can play as a little bit of a stretch five, and that could be something they have success with when they sub out Joval. They haven't really liked playing Xavier Tillman down the stretch that much, and Brandon Clark is super undersized to be playing the five. So really their best options at the five are Joval and Jaren Jackson Jr. So I think there's some interesting leverage there.
So Rayen already talked about where he was out on Dillon Brooks today, kind of shorting him from what it sounded like, Alex. He did play 40 minutes last game against San Antonio, huge playing time and considerable enough usage, nothing insane, but enough when you're out there with guys like Joval and Ja Morant to feel relatively good about it. He has decent stock upside, averaging 1.5 stocks per game, not the biggest on peripherals, but he is going to come out and probably play 38 to 40 minutes if this game stays competitive tonight.
Definitely. Brooks has been getting killer minutes, especially the last game, and he's intriguing. He doesn't really rebound or get assists. His rebounding percentage on the defensive end is 7%. His assist percent is 10%. So not a guy that's going to add a lot in peripherals. So that's all going to come down to is he sinking threes. So I think a guy that if he gets hot from the field, like put up a big score, but it is a little tougher for him to get there than guys that fill up the stat sheet in a lot of different ways.
Oh my God. Drop Roses is back, Jordan. How long has it been? A couple months now? This is why we need a producer cam. Tired of trying to read your lips. That's crazy. Welcome back, fella. Excited for your Drew Lock as the GOAT takes going forward. Really? Wow. Okay. He's back. Reinvigorated. New spirit here with Drop Rose. I can't wait to hear what he has to say next. And I mean that in all sincerity. Brian, do you want to add anything to Brooks? You talked about that earlier with the storyline and defending Steph Curry, who took 36 shots, might I add, in that game, which is why he had such an absurd performance. But what do you make of Dillon Brooks here?
So the thing about Dillon Brooks, he's going to be out there as long as Steph Curry's out there, and he's going to just trying to control him as much as he can. I mean, I still have him, but like he's going to play at 40 plus minutes. I think I'm just concerned that he's just not going to be able to really get going. I think he's going to be too highly owned for my liking. So I like taking my chances on pretty much all the other starters I prefer compared to Dillon Brooks for Memphis side of things. He might be my least favorite starter in terms of DFS perspective tonight.
Okay. Now I'll stick with you for a second here. We're working through all of the starters.
Mm-hmm.
But what we've yet to get to is Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson played 32 minutes last game, and you made a good point, Ryan. He did not, Jaren Jackson did not close that game, which is a little strange. It's not that he didn't play in the fourth. He actually came out with like 3 or 4 minutes left, which would have got him close to that 35-minute mark and made a pretty significant difference. Foul trouble wasn't an issue. What about Kyle Anderson, the cheapest of the 5 starters tonight on DK?
Yeah, so Kyle Anderson obviously always has tournament winning upside in him. He's just a much better fantasy player when he plays the 4 compared to the 3. And he finished that game out as the 4, I believe, when they took out Jaren Jackson Jr. I believe Desmond Bane ended up coming in and closing the game. Could be wrong. But Kyle Anderson is just
Bane
better.
did close the game. You're right. Yeah.
Bane did close the game. Okay. So he's just better when he plays the 4 in terms of fantasy perspective, more rebounding opportunities. The system runs differently when he's on the court, when he's on the floor instead of Jackson. So his ceiling is a little lowered because of that. But I just think Taylor Jenkins is going to trust Kyle Anderson out there. He's going to play, I think, at least mid-30s minutes, barring any foul trouble. I don't expect him to really I believe he's going to be the one on Wiggins instead of Morant, potentially. I'm not sure what happened in the game against Golden State the other time. But I think I prefer Anderson to Jaren Jackson Jr. just because I think I'm confident that Anderson's going to close this game out.
Okay. Now, Alex, we'll get to Anderson for you and then hit the bench here because there are some legitimate question marks, from Bane to Brandon Clark not getting a single minute last game to DeAnthony Melton only playing 11 minutes. But close out the starting five with your take on Kyle Anderson.
Yeah, I think Kyle Anderson, he's got a good price on DraftKings today, which is the main appeal. Not really his permanent production, where not as good a rebounder with Jonas Valanciunas on the court. So, Jaren Jackson kind of playing the four instead of Kyle Anderson. So I think that hurts his fantasy production a little bit. But he's kind of cheap, so I don't hate him. It's just not someone I'd prioritize.
All right, sticking with you, talking about the bench here. We've seen Taylor Jenkins run really big rotations, right? Like, just he'll pull players off the street as long as he can get them 5 minutes at some point in the game. Last game, he ran 10 players. Grayson Allen, though, only played 5 minutes. Tyus Jones only played 7 minutes. Brandon Clark didn't play at all. So if you really look at this and forget about how many players played and actually look at how many players got bench minutes, it's an entirely different situation, right? Because Desmond Bane played 25 minutes as the first guy off the bench, and as Ryan mentioned, closed over Jaren Jackson Jr. The rest of the four starters closed that game out. But he was the only one to get more than 11 minutes off the bench yesterday. How does that affect your approach going into tonight's game, or not yesterday, last game? How does that affect your approach going into tonight's game against Golden State?
I think Memphis is a team that has a pretty good bench, especially DeAnthony Melton and Brandon Clark, as well as Bane. But I feel like DeAnthony Melton and Clark could be like 30-minute a game guys on a different team, but they're just kind of buried in the depth chart in Memphis. The problem is Melton doesn't really gel well with John Morant. He's a smaller guard that needs the ball in his hands to be at his maximum effectiveness. So that does make it hard for Melton to get there. But if he's playing well, I don't think there would be any problem for him to get minutes from guys like Kyle Anderson and Jaren Jackson potentially. So I don't mind him. And then the guys I'm not really confident will play today are Clark, who wasn't in the rotation last game. That was kind of a surprise. I don't hate taking a shot on him, just hoping he plays. And Tillman, who when they've had all bigs healthy, he hasn't played every game. So I'm mostly focusing on Melton and Bane off the bench because it looks like those are the guys that you can count will have a decent run tonight.
Throw you a bit of a curveball here, Rimpack. Do you think Taylor Jenkins gives Brandon Clark any minutes tonight? And how much impact does it have when Joe Val's playing close to 40 minutes in these games?
Yeah, so, I mean, the thing that will help Brandon Clark potentially if Joe Val finds a way in getting in some sort of foul trouble. Now, that's obviously really hard to predict. Now, I'm not sure why he went to Tillman in the matchup against the Spurs. So I'm really it's going to be really interesting to see how many minutes end up being spread around in those backup big minutes in the front court outside. Is it going to be Tillman who gets to run today, or is it going to be Clark? So I'm not sure. I'm just trying to pull up the box score from the game on Saturday. How did Clark do in those minutes he played? Was he like at least a plus player or minus player? I'm trying to. I'm trying to pull that up.
Against Golden State, he played 14 minutes. You're talking about the last game of the season, right?
Yep, Sunday.
He had 2 points, 1 rebound, and 2 fouls in 14 minutes. Granted, only 14 minutes, only one game we're talking about. But in 3 games against Golden State this season, he's played 19 minutes, average 19 minutes, has averaged 10.3 points, 3.7 rebounds, no other peripherals. But Golden State's had so much movement at the front court, so it's hard to say like what those matchups looked like, if it was Wiseman, if it was Kevon Looney and such too. But yeah, 2 points, 1 rebound, 14 minutes the last time they faced.
Yeah, so that's really those 14 minutes are a lot. Obviously, different situation today, and it's going to be if you're making a lot of lineups, you can go there. He was a minus 11 on the court when he was on there, so I'm not sure how many minutes he's really going to get. Maybe they give Tillman the chance, but if you're building a lot of lineups, you can take some chances on Clark, but it might be honestly it's just long shot, big like the massive DraftKings tournament, massive FanDuel tournament. I don't think you really need to play him on Yahoo where he's $13. So there are better options that are cheaper than him, and where we're more confident that there's a starter in Kevon Looney who's 10 and Jordan Poole, who I'm confident are going to play at least 20 minutes tonight.
Yo, did you see that Jordan Poole cross up the other day that he almost threw it down for the highlight of the damn playoffs?
Yeah, Jordan Poole, shout out to Michigan. He went to Michigan. He always plays with swagger on it. He plays with a lot of swagger. And yeah, it's been nice to see improving his game. He's kind of in the doghouse his rookie year, but he's really turning into an NBA rotational player now.
Desmond Bane's also minimum salary on Yahoo, Alex. So you've got, that's what I was saying. Like, it's kind of fun putting lineups together because you have the megastar, the superstar, the star, and then 2 flex. You can really mix it up a good amount if you want to. And honestly, Xavier Tillman, I'm not saying we should be interested in him, but given what he played last game, he at least got on the floor. So I really don't know what to make of these guys, but a lot of minimum salary options on Yahoo tonight, Alex, including Desmond Bane.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little hesitant to go to that minimum salary on Yahoo because Bane, although he's been getting decent minutes and he has a good 3-point shot, he's just not a great permanent producer. And the main reason is I just don't know if you really need to dig down that far. I was able to build a pretty sick lineup without getting any $10 players. So
even without Looney?
Yeah, I didn't even go. I mean, honestly, like I didn't scroll down that far. So maybe these $10 players will be a little bit lower on than you think. But I picked the 5 guys I liked. And I was like, okay, done. Like, no need to scroll down.
That's awesome. I got to a lot of Looney on Yahoo, Ryan, just because here's my thinking, right? And we can make this transition over to Golden State if you guys want to, unless you have anything else on Memphis here.
Yeah, let's. I just want to talk about other guys you can take shots on long shot options. If Morant gets in foul trouble, if you're somehow predicting that script, I think Tyus Jones and DeAnthony Melton are the immediate beneficiaries. So if you want to build some lineups without Morant, you might be interested in having one of those 2 guys in there potentially, just because I do think they get the minutes if he gets in some sort of foul trouble. Grayson Allen did return, and he played very few minutes. So it's really hard to go to these bench guys in any sort of confidence. But in Showdown, in one game, in NBA formats, there are times where to really separate yourself, your lineup's going to be very low projected, but it's going to be very unique. And just taking some chances on some of these bench guys can make your lineup different, but you really need game script to fall in your favor to really pan out.
No question. What if Jaren Jackson or Jaren Jackson gets in foul trouble, which is, I mean, it's the likelihood that Jaren Jackson gets in foul trouble is pretty high.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I think what could happen is what we saw when they closed the game against the Spurs. I think they moved Anderson to the 4 potentially, and then they probably cycle in Bane, Allen, Melton going super small in the guards, but those would be the 3 guys who I'd expect to get those minutes if Jaren Jackson Jr. gets injured. Gets in foul trouble.
All right, here we go. Kevon Looney. That's right. We're starting the Warriors with Kevon Looney, fellas, because I think this is a pretty significant spot to touch on. If you didn't know and you jumped in late, use the promo code PLAYIN, PLAY-IN, or go to awesemo.com/promos and get 2 weeks of the Awesemo Express Pass for NBA for the price of 1. That includes the NBA Big Board, the lineup builder, ownership rankings, but also every single tool we have included for a Showdown contest. Every Showdown tool we have, ownership, projections, you name it, comes with the Express Pass, less than $5 a week. If you use the promo code, go to awesemo.com/promos, play in. If you use that, you get 2 weeks for the price of 1. Today's the last day to do it. There's going to be huge. We've already seen it. Massive Showdown contest. Get every edge that you can. Use those tools created, used by the #1 ranked DFS player out there, Awesemo himself. And let's go win some money. All right, Alex, Kevon Looney. You didn't scroll down far enough on Yahoo, but I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I like him a lot today. It's a very simple reason. I think they get crushed on the boards if they don't have a big enough front court out there. And when I look at Kevon Looney, I'm not saying that this is some, hulking big man that rivals the likes of Joel Embiid and Rudy Gobert and Jonas Valanciunas, but it's kind of the best they got in a situation like this, right? And he plays bigger than he is. He played 31 minutes against Memphis and against Joval last time out, and he's gotten big minutes against bigger centers. He played 30 minutes against the Utah Jazz, played 32 minutes against that hulking New Orleans front court as well, with Zion and Steven Adams healthy in that game. Not saying he's a per-minute stud, but Kevon Looney is somebody that I think could pull 30 minutes tonight if Joval's crushing them on the glass.
Yeah, I mean, Kevon Looney, he's the guy that plays best closer to the basket. So I feel like Joval is a interesting matchup because he also has that same style. So I think that I was very conflicted about this earlier today. It was like I had an angel on my shoulder telling me, like, okay, this is good for Kevon Looney because Joval is not going to draw him away from the basket. But the devil is telling me it's like, well, if they put Draymond at the 5, they're going to get better floor spacing and maybe pull Joval away from the basket. So, like, it's like I'm very conflicted, like, which one of these two things are going to happen, because it seems like in the NBA, it's pretty difficult to predict whether they want the floor spacer versus a less mobile big like Joval, or if they want the big guy to just not get out-rebounded.
For sure. Now, I guess the question is, like, if you're throwing, I don't know, does it make sense to space it out that much with the players that you have on the floor for Golden State would be the question. We'll see. Like, we'll definitely see. I just think Joval could be a massive problem for them. But you know what it is, Ryan? And everything Alex said makes sense. There are two different ways that this could go, but it's whichever team's getting beat up early on. So let's just assume that the Golden State's knocking down 55% of their threes, or on the contrary, let's say that Joval has 10 rebounds in the first quarter. I think the only difference here is Steve Kerr can do a lot of different things with his front court rotation. Taylor Jenkins is going to be hard pressed and have to answer a lot of questions if he takes Joval out of the game because they were giving up a lot of threes.
Yeah. And I mean, they could obviously put Joval on an island. I mean, Steve Kerr could target that quite a bit, and maybe they're going to have to get away from Joval. We'll see how Steve Kerr attacks this game plan. In terms of going to Kevon Looney, the thing about him, I just expect him to play those minutes, and especially at the Yahoo $10 price tag, he opens things up for you. I mean, if you don't want to play Looney at $10, I think Jordan Poole is another great $10 option as well. Just talking about some $10 guys on Yahoo, because definitely take a look at those contests tonight. But I just think he's an interesting play. I don't mind taking the over on his rebounding prop, or if you get a solid line in your favor. I expect him to get double-digit rebounds, but potentially if he gets stays out of foul trouble against this Valanciunas matchup. But I like that. I like his rotation, just looking at the game flow for him. So yeah, he's going to be someone I try to target. I think being slightly above the field is where I'm going to do on DraftKings and FanDuel. I think he's an interesting option just because I know he doesn't have the greatest of upsides. I know we're very used to seeing Kevon Looney near the mid throughout the regular season in classic formats and just regular daily fantasy formats. So he's a fine option. But look, if Looney's not going to play, I expect Draymond Green just to soak up those minutes at the 5. And I think Draymond Green is just an outstanding play. And he's very sneaky, megastar MVP option as well. We know Draymond Green just fills up the stat sheet as best as it gets. He's a huge stocks guy. So especially on those Yahoo and FanDuel scoring, he's a very, very sneaky low-owned option. I like using him at the megastar option as and especially a superstar option as well. The second 1.5 multiplier, and I believe that's the star multiplier on FanDuel. And he's a great captain option on DraftKings. If you think Looney's not going to play a lot of minutes at 5, I think Draymond's the next guy up, because we know the rotation's just 3 guys after that, and they're all like wing players in Toscano, Anderson, Mulder, and Jordan Poole.
Yeah, excellent point. And I love anyone that can make 3 shots in the whole game and triple-double and have 60 DraftKings points, 60 fantasy points. I mean, there's just so much upside there. Alex, let's go to you here, closing out the front court. What do you think of Draymond Green today across the board?
He's a solid option. I like that. The point that Ryan mentioned about how if he gets more center minutes and maybe they don't roll with Looney, he's going to get more rebounding opportunities. His assists are elite. we have him projected for almost 10 assists and 10 rebounds. So I think, I mean, it's hard to find a hole in his game other than just that he's not really a scorer, so he's not on the same tier as Steph Curry.
All right, so let's make the obvious transition here to Steph Curry. Let me see if we have an ownership update here. So the ownership right now on Steph Curry is 92% on draft. It's just crazy. 92% of DraftKings, 100% on FanDuel. Is he really going to be 100% owned on FanDuel today, Alex?
Maybe he should be. Probably not, but this does seem like an extreme edge case.
Yeah, it really does. What are we doing? That's such a dumb question. We know what we're doing with Stephen Curry. The better question that can actually help people watching this show, right? I'm a professional. I know when I fuck up. The professionals don't say fuck. What are we doing with the captain spot when it comes to Steph Curry? You talked about there being other options here. Like, we could talk about Curry for as long as we want. It's not helping anyone. Everyone knows Steph Curry in the captain spot. Steph Curry, wherever you want him, is a phenomenal option here in a must-win game. But what are some of the alternative avenues that we could take to getting captains in there that aren't Stephen Curry? And really, how viable is that?
So I like Steph Curry as a captain, of course, but sometimes on DraftKings it can be tricky because if you spend up for a captain Steph Curry, then you're gonna be salary capped pretty hard with the rest of your players and be funneled into a similar lineup construction as everyone else. So if you spend down for a inexpensive captain and then put Curry in the flex, you can get a little bit more unique. So it depends on the field size for me. So if I'm trying to take down a big one, going a little bit cheaper at captain makes sense to get a little different. However, FanDuel and Yahoo, like, their system's totally different because you don't spend a multiplier for your megastar MVP. So if you're playing Steph Curry on FanDuel or Yahoo, you should probably play him at MVP or star, or just fade him completely. I think if you're not playing Steph, it's just because you think that a lineup that has a lot of mid-range guys is going to do really well.
Yeah, Ryan, same question to you here. It's obviously the biggest one on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, so funny story. You're bringing up Steph Curry at the captain spot. So on Sunday, when DraftKings ran a mini iteration of the Showdown, they actually messed up in their pricing algorithm where you couldn't roster more than 3 starters on this game. And the winning lineup ended up taking down 2 zeros of 1K. So people won the Showdown playing Klay Thompson and Sean McDermott as 2 zeros. Yeah.
When was this?
And this was on Sunday, the final game of the yeah. So, and there was a huge train of this guy had a huge train with 2 1K players, and he just jammed in Steph Curry, Valanciunas, Morant, and just because you had to do that to be able to get the points. It's just how unique Showdown can get at times, where it was pretty wild to me. I was like, wow, this guy just won a Showdown with Klay Thompson in the year where has a torn Achilles.
He was forced to play. He was forced to play people that were confirmed not playing.
Correct. Yeah, and
won.
It worked out for him. Yeah, it worked out for him because Steph Curry put up this insane performance at captain score of, I believe it was like 110, 109. And obviously you're going to have interest in Steph Curry when he can put up a captain score that outscores the rest of the game by 50 points, because it's going to be really hard to make that up elsewhere. And if you're going to play captain Curry today, you're going to be very, very uncomfortable playing guys off the bench who really, you need them to crush. A lot of things have to go right for you to play captain Curry over there in DraftKings, but it's more feasible to play him on Yahoo Megastar or FanDuel MVP, because there's a lot of other value options that you don't have to sacrifice as much. Obviously, a different game, a different puzzle to solve, and obviously one less variable put together. So it's a lot easier to do that on those sites to go Curry option. And now people have asked me, can we fade Curry tonight? I mean, that's really tough to do. But I built some lineups without Curry to see how they look, and it's tough. But if you were to fade Curry, I can't recommend it on a win or go home slate.
Neither can I. But I don't have a problem going with like Morant at captain on DraftKings. He has 60+ fantasy point upside. We've seen him do it. Rayen, you talked a lot about Draymond Green. Draymond Green could go 10, 15, and 16 today and give you 5 or 6 stocks and easy 60 plus. So I don't think it's impossible that Steph Curry isn't I think actually not only is it not impossible, but I think there's a very good chance that you could have winning lineups that don't have Steph and Curry in the captain spot. Just for an example, Daniel Gafford was in the winning lineup just last night. The captain spot in the winning lineup was Daniel Gafford. So it's surely not out of the ordinary for the best player on the slate not to be in the captain spot. It is, I know, out of the ordinary for him not to be in your lineup at all.
Oh, I completely agree with you. And you can take some chances at the like Draymond Green is a phenomenal captain option, in my opinion. And just because he has that potential to be that highest scoring player by 10 plus points, because he gets that triple-double bonus on DraftKings, double-double bonus, that stock bonus over there on FanDuel and Yahoo, where he's really versatile in your lineups, where he gives you that similar upside. It might not be as high as Steph Curry's, but it's right there. It's right under there. So where he gives you that opportunity to really make your lineup unique, where it's really hard to do on these single-game contests, and pretty much the upside's still there. And Draymond Green obviously knows how to stay on the court. He might get minutes at the 5, and just because he might find a way to triple-double in 3 quarters, because he's going to be out there, going to be manned to do a lot. He gets like weird ball handling duties at the top of the key. So there's a lot of ways for Draymond Green to be the highest scoring player on the slate.
Our guy over under says Laffy must be on something. Daniel Gafford had like 6 blocks. There isn't that guy. I didn't say there was. I said Westbrook or Beal or Sabonis weren't in the captain spot. I said Westbrook specifically. And today I think you can go to guys like Morant and Draymond Green specifically. Alex, talk to me about Andrew Wiggins, just the absolute bane of my existence.
Well, I mean, he's best as a scorer, and they have Curry on the team, so that makes it a little tough for him in this particular situation in Golden State. But he plays a ton of minutes, he takes shots, so I feel pretty ambivalent about him. I mean, he's probably a better fantasy producer than some of the other starters on the slate, because he can grab some boards, get some assists, and his usage is 23% on the season, pretty good. So not a guy that you should be excited about, but definitely an option tonight.
I'll tell you what, Rayen, this was a true Jekyll and Hyde performance from Wiggins. Did you watch the Warriors-Lakers game?
I did. And it was one of the really good, best games of the year, obviously, to see just like stars go back and forth. LeBron getting poked in the eye, saying he saw 3 rims, and he zoomed in. He actually did get poked in the eye
after the game. And he's like, I just shot at the one in the middle.
He just he's meant for Hollywood. I mean, look at him. It was a sensational game. But yeah, Wiggins was outstanding. And the thing about Wiggins this year, his defense is really elevated, where Steve Kerr trusts him. It's not that they create a lot of plays for Wiggins on the court and whatnot, but he just seems a lot more comfortable. Obviously, it's a lot easier to play on a proven system. And I think he's just a better basketball player in this Golden State year. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year when Clay returns. But Wiggins is someone I think he's probably – it's tough where to put him among the starters, just because he has an upside where we saw in this matchup against Memphis, he went 21 and 10. And he's really points dependent. The 10 rebounds, I do think, is kind of an outlier performance. So the thing that he's going to have going for him, he's a starter that's going to play high 30s minutes for sure. And he's going to be very, very low-owned captain option. He might open things up for you. So that's why you would want to consider him, because he's going to be a starter playing 40 minutes. But outside of that, it's not really much for me to go to in terms of Wiggins. Just kind of sums up who Andrew Wiggins is.
Any thoughts on Bazemore?
So think about Kent Bazemore. All right. So he played 28 minutes in the same matchup on Sunday. And we saw Jordan Poole slowly take a lot of his minutes away from Kent Bazemore as the year ended. Jordan Poole has really shown to have more of an offensive game than Kent Bazemore, but I still think Bazemore is a better defender. And now, is Bazemore going to be asked to guard the likes of Kyle Anderson or Dillon Brooks? It really doesn't matter. Is Steve Kerr going to sacrifice Bazemore for Poole. And I'm not sure how many minutes those two guys share together on the court that much where you want to create rules or whatnot. I really don't like creating rules at all in one game showdown or single game format. But Kent Bazemore is just that I'm concerned with the minutes, how they're working out from of late. But he's a guy who Steve Kerr has played mid-30s minutes once Kelly Oubre has been hurt. So he might be a low-owned option where he has upside when he plays those minutes for sure.
Bazemore and Jordan Poole. What are you doing with either of them tonight, Alex?
So Bazemore, I agree. His minutes can vary based on how the bench guys are playing here. So I don't feel confident in him, but I was honestly surprised by how many minutes he got down the stretch in the season. His price, though, isn't favorable tonight, so I don't think he's a great option. Maybe if you want to take a contrarian dart, I do think Poole is a little bit he's also kind of expensive and the minutes are shaky. So actually I might prefer going down to some other guys. One being Michael Mulder. Mulder, he's been buried in the depth chart at points in the season, but they announced Damian Lee is still out or he's unlikely to play tonight. And Mulder played about 20 minutes in the last game, which is very good for 2,200. I know he'll be in the rotation, and that's a lot better than you can say about any other player at that price. So that seems like a pretty good option for some salary savings.
Yeah, no question. And Ryan, just going back to Yahoo, I can't ignore it. Jordan Poole is also minimum salary. So him and Kevon Looney are both cellar dwellers on this slate. If you were to throw them at the flex, you can go Curry, Jonas Valanciunas. You can go Curry, Dre, Jonas Valanciunas. You could do anything you want with megastar, superstar, and star with Poole and Looney. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that, but I do think as far as minimum salary guys go, very infrequently are you going to get two minimum salary options as good as this that could play 30 and 28 minutes respectively.
Yeah, and they just open things up for you on the Yahoo format for you where you can just mix and match with your star and superstar with guys like you've mentioned, Valanciunas, Morant, Draymond, Wiggins, and just get different there. They do open things up for you. Now,
how much do you worry about dupes, though? I know it's a smaller field, but how much do you worry about the fact that, like, Curry, Morant, Joe Val, Poole, Looney's got to be duped even on a smaller field?
Oh, that's going to be probably one of the highest owned lineups of people who are using some sort of lineup builder or whatnot to just looking at projections. I think people are usually smart enough to build that out. Now, you don't have to get that different. All you got to do is you can keep one of those guys in there and find a way to upgrade the other flex position. And that alone will set your lineup apart by quite a bit where that lineup won't be duped as much. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. I mean, you could potentially take a chance on Michael Mulder's minutes. Maybe he's the one who gets going this game. He's going to be, I don't know, like a 10th of the ownership of Jordan Poole's and Kevon Looney. So those are the game theory aspects in single game showdown where they just differentiate your lineup where, yes, you're sacrificing like median projection, but you are gaining in unique of lineup and the upside of winning solo or upside of winning with lesser dupes.
Yeah, for sure. I look at this now, Alex, and it's like you could leave money on the table potentially, or you could probably still get just as different by taking out one of those $10 guys and then going with two mid-tier guys instead of one of the top three, not named Curry, of course. You're leaving him in your lineups.
Yeah, definitely. This is an interesting one. So I'm kind of retracting what I was thinking on DraftKings with Michael Mulder because since he is the only low-price guy, his ownership is very high at 30% for a player of his caliber. So on DraftKings, I'm thinking maybe you get different by just not shoving in all the like top end options that are really high owned and try to mix it up a little bit more with some shakier plays. But it does look like Poole is pretty high owned too. On FanDuel and Yahoo, on Yahoo, I don't think you really need to get too crazy because the field sizes aren't really huge. So it does make sense to just put Curry in at your megastar. On FanDuel, then you're going to need some salary savings. So guys like Mulder kind of fit that bill. On FanDuel, I feel like it might be a trap to go to the bottom range where you just kind of are. It only really works if you spend all the salary like to the 60K, and then you're gonna have the same lineup as everyone else. So I think I might stop at the like 7,500 range.
All right. Let's close this out with the Awesemo Hall of Fame. We had some big winners yesterday. And then the three of us will give our top value options from DraftKings, FanDuel, and over there on Yahoo, where they've got the 10K baller. That filled, but they got the 5K single game baller and the $1,000 Awesemo free roll. Use the promo code Awesemo10, all one word, AWESEMO10, to get yourself $2,000 in those YSRPs, $10 entry or less when you deposit $5 or more. All right, Jordan, let's make this happen. Hall of Fame. Yesterday we had a huge one. P. Hanley just keeps doing big things again. Chopped first place in the showdown with our boy Steve Buzzard, the Colts. You know him by now. Tom JK 321, also known as the CEO of Awesemo. 14,000 almost each for all of them. That's a beautiful thing to see, all of those avatars up there. And hey, if you want to get up there, all you got to do is download that Awesemo profile pic at awesemo.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Awesemo Hall of Fame and win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. $100 value for the entire month. Just finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more and get your beautiful face up here on the screen. Here's another one. Our boy News God coming up big. Nice ROI there. What else do we have, Jordan? Keep them moving. Chris Giordani. Oh, he's another Awesemo guy. Gotta love it. Couple $1,000 in the pocket there. An MLB early slate thing. And then Need Do. Awesemo. Shout out to Josh Ingham and Laffy and the rest of the crew for all the great content. Hit the double dip tonight. 2 wins right there. 2 top 3 wins. Of course, you only get 1 month of Awesemo, but still very happy for you. And then here, another one. Like I said, this doesn't need to be a $100,000 win. You could win the piggy bank, the quarter arcade, doesn't matter. If it's a field of 5,000 or more, you top 3, you're getting a free month of Awesemo Plus. So great stuff to everybody. And then Michael here, Awesemo, woo, he says, $2,000 up top. And the last one, our boy Scripps coming up in the clutch, first place there. And there you go. There you have it. Tweet your wins at Awesemo Hall of Fame. Oh, one more. Follow Josh Ingham. I'm not going to read one. It follows Josh Ingham's advice. Josh Ingham. I'm just kidding. Josh does a great job, great process show. Ended up finishing first, even though it was a tie, $666. Not a great number, but a great win. Congratulations.
I'm going to interrupt you, Laffy.
Please, I'm done anyway.
I thought the coolest thing that I saw on Twitter was at Trav19 Purdue. He bought a pool thanking us.
Dude, how awesome was that? We should have put that up there. That was so cool. Dude says, thanks to the Awesemo and Fantasy Cruncher product, don't want to leave them out, I was able to buy this pool. And he had a beautiful in-ground pool installed, basketball net. You could see the hairy legs sticking out the bottom of the photo. It was a beautiful thing, Alex.
Dude, I haven't even bought a pool. I need to win some of these contests using Fantasy Cruncher.
Soon enough, man. Hey, guys, hit that thumbs up, too. We got almost 900 people watching, only 128 likes. Don't do me like that. Don't do us like that. We're doing everything we can here to put out a full hour show for Showdown, live before lock as well, coming up next immediately after us. So be sure to stick around for them. These guys got you covered all the way up till 9. Top value options. We're already a minute past, so that's my fault. I'm sure they don't mind. Ryan, top value options across the board tonight to make some good lineups, but also maybe not be too chalky that you're duping with 1,000 other people.
Yeah, I think probably Draymond Green over there on DraftKings. I really like that. Tough not to look at Looney or Poole over there on Yahoo, but they do open a lot of things up for you over there. As I pull up FanDuel, I'm going to let Alex talk about DraftKings and Yahoo.
Go for it, Alex.
I think my favorites on DraftKings are Jaren Jackson, who I feel like the foul trouble means really high variance, and that works in your favor in GPPs. And then Kevon Looney, because he's really, really cheap.
All right. Yeah, Looney and Poole over there on Yahoo. I think Ryan brought out the point that Mulder could be an interesting option just because no one's going to feel like they need to go to him like they might on DraftKings, and that's pretty significant. I just love Looney on DraftKings, though. I know it's going to be chalky, but I don't think it's going to be that chalky. And if he does, in fact, see those minutes against Joval in a big front court, you could get 30 plus from him. And it's very hard to get that on Showdown slate from guys at that price, particularly at the center position where you can fall into peripheral stats. So that'll do it for us. This was fun, fellas. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Definitely.
Definitely. Right. Good luck to Alex. I hope you take down first this weekend, and I'll catch you in the flip.
That's
Thanks,
right,
guys.
man. Yeah, congrats. Enjoy that hotel room. Don't do nothing I wouldn't do. And stick around. Greg Ehrenberg, Eric Lindquist coming up next, taking you up to 9 o'clock. And thanks to you guys for hanging out with us throughout a one-game slate for the full hour. Means a lot. We couldn't do this without you. Good luck tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Awesome. Great show, guys.
Great show, boys. We went...
It is the Awesemo NBA Live Before Lock show, sponsored by Yahoo. Just a one-game slate to talk about. So Eric Lindquist and I, we're certainly going to be killing some time. Not something that we're unfamiliar with. We've killed many of hours together on the airwaves, and that is something else that we're going to have to do tonight for sure. And definitely, hey guys, if you have questions, fire them into the YouTube chat, fire them into the premium Slack chat. There is a good chance that Eric and I are going to get to the majority of them today. We are going to be very liberal with the amount of questions that we answer today. Something else with today's show being sponsored by Yahoo. We also have our own sponsored contest once again on Yahoo. They are running single game contest right now. Also, if you're looking to make a deposit on Yahoo, use the promo code Awesemo10. If you make a deposit of at least $5, you will get $10 in Yahoo free play money. So definitely go check that out. And then also we have a free roll up on Yahoo. It's the Awesemo free roll. Pretty easy to find. It'll just like Yahoo, Awesemo in parentheses. Go check that out. Free to play, free money, nothing wrong with that. So Eric, one game slate. Let's start with this. Who do you think wins the game tonight?
Golden State. I'll eat the chalk. I'm a chalk donkey. That's what I do. So I think -5 looking pretty good. I have a little bit of coin here on the Golden State side of it. I think Steph Curry finds a way to get it done. And I know Dillon Brooks is a phenomenal individual defender. I think Andrew Wiggins is actually going to cause problems for Dillon Brooks too. I think Dillon Brooks is going to have a tough night. I definitely am siding with Impact there as well. He's going to have his hands full on the defensive end. He's going to have probably the best individual defender outside of Draymond Green on him and Andrew Wiggins. So I'm looking for Golden State to win this game and probably pretty handily too. I'm going to say it's more than 10 points.
All right. So with that in mind, is it changing any of your lineup construction at all? Because we saw yesterday's game, right? That was a blowout, led to some really wonky results. And we had, Daniel Gafford was in the optimal lineup as the captain last night. He was in first place. We had Cassius Stanley. Lofty was talking about him right before we came on. He ends up with a big game, but not really stuff that we normally would have expected. A lot of it had to do with the score of the game. Now, obviously, last night's game had a really tight spread. I don't think we would have expected it to be a blowout. But are you building any lineups and maybe throwing in some weird bench players, thinking like, hey, maybe this game becomes a blowout and this is just so many players won't be on?
Yeah, I think I am. And, I'm talking about how much I like Golden State. I think if you're going 4-2 or 5-1 on DraftKings, or if you're going to go 4-1 of all Grizzlies, you are doing something very, very, very different from the rest of the field. And I think there is a path where you play Steph Curry at the captain and surround him with a bunch of Memphis guys and figure out a way for that to kind of excel. Like Steph can go out and get 70 on his own accord. And, Draymond's a tough guy for me to get away from, but I can plug in 4 Grizzlies alongside those two guys on DraftKings, and then finding ways to surround them with other pieces. I mean, if you think the production is going to funnel through 1 or 2 guys on either side, there's some options and some different routes, but extreme blowouts. Like if you're building for that way, like the Cassius Stanley yesterday, you really only need to have it turn out well one time in order to make really, really good in some spots. So if you can take a super chalky build and you are risk averse enough that you can burn $15, find a way to get off of Kevon Looney on DraftKings, find a way to get off of Mulder, play somebody who's going to be legitimately sub 2% owned. And there might be 1 or 2 guys we can talk about later. We have the time.
We've got 51 minutes left, and trust me when I say I'm going to be looking at the clock, and I'm going to be, because Jordan always gets a little mad with me because sometimes we go over 30 seconds, and I clock out right when we hit that final buzzer. And if you think I'm doing anything differently today, Jordan, you would be mistaken.
Happy Friday.
Yeah. So I think we should just kind of start at the top. First of all, if anybody is picking the Grizzlies to win outright, I'd be curious. Throw that into the chat. And by the way, we did have somebody in chat here saying that Lee unlikely to play. Yeah, Damian Lee is out tonight, or at least doubtful to play. So yeah, most likely not going to be playing, and that is something that does open up some value, at least as far as single game contests go. Which is actually, it's something funny that Alex had tweeted out earlier, and it's very true. It's like, in what world is like Damian Lee, his injury status just totally alters the shape of a slate? Well, that's what happens on a 1-game slate, but not the high end. It's going to affect some of the value plays, but starting at the top, let's just talk about Steph Curry. Is there any scenario where you are building lineups that don't have Steph Curry in them?
No, it's last night. I wrote the slate starter for the 2 Showdown slates here the last couple nights, and really kind of was trying to find paths where Steph Curry is not like the guy in this spot. I think Draymond Green putting up a triple-double on DraftKings could make things interesting from a captain perspective, but it's really because of the difference between his salary on both DraftKings and FanDuel, only $500 on FanDuel. Steph Curry projects so much better than JVal for me. Same thing on DraftKings, $1,400. It's just not enough. The salaries are kind of screwed up there. Yahoo did an amazing job, I think. And I think that building on Yahoo is definitely my favorite of all the places that I was building on today, because they did inflate the Steph Curry number to a place where like $49 is at least meaningful. And there's a huge jump between 49 and 35. And then with all these players at the $10 spots, there are some pivots. There's some ways to get different. I think it's really the most enjoyable of all 3 sites to be building on. But DraftKings and FanDuel, it is so impossible for me to get away from Steph. And even on Yahoo, playing him in a Megastar where it's 1,600 people in that big tournament. I've got quite a few entries over in that, and I'm just not getting away from Steph at the top.
Yeah, it's really hard for me too. I mean, to me, the question, and by the way, the lineups I've built, Steph Curry 100%. Just the question to me where it starts to get a little bit more of a discussion is for DraftKings, obviously, where there's a different salary structure for somebody when they're in the captain spot. That's not the case for Yahoo. That's not the case for FanDuel. And to me, that just makes Steph Curry a fairly obvious play as the whatever we're calling on the different sites. We got the MVP, just the guy who gets the biggest bonus on the different sites. It's captain, it's MVP, it's something different on every single site, and it's like, it's confused. Everybody knows
the guy I want to have go ape. You know what? There we go.
So with Steph Curry, obvious pay up to me on Yahoo and FanDuel, but then on DraftKings, where it becomes a little bit different is he is much more expensive than everybody else. And there is a little bit of an opportunity cost associated with playing Steph Curry as the captain. So with that in mind, is he still your favorite choice for the captain on DK?
No. And this is kind of where I'm just trying to get different. And I'm willing to, on some of these showdown slates, find paths. So if you're building for a narrative, if you're building for blowouts, if you're building for other things, I think there's ways to build lineups where Steph Curry doesn't necessarily have to be the featured guy. I'm basically, there's two plays that I'm really, really high on tonight. And it's just basically trying to target somebody that can be the unsung hero. So if you look at Lugan's Dort from last year, I was going through a bunch of showdown results from the bubble because I played a lot more of the showdown in the playoffs than what I did for the regular season this year. I think most people that's kind of what it is. You play all the NBA that you possibly can until the very end. And so I'm happy with more basketball in the play-in tournaments than not, but there were so many times where Lugan's Dort was kind of the guy who came out of the middle of nowhere for OKC in some of those showdowns that I played. I think Jordan Poole can be that guy tonight. And so DraftKings, going to Jordan Poole, where you're looking at 5,400. He's sitting down there, has a decent enough, looking at his captain exposure, heading over to the Fantasy Cruncher right now. He's coming in right underneath 5%. He's like maybe the 12th or 10th highest owned captain. I think that there's enough of a 3-point upside that exists for him to go out there and get hot. Has been shooting a lot of threes here, played 26 minutes in that Lakers game, attempted 5 threes. If he gets it going, that's the kind of guy who might be able to cut into a little bit of the 3-point upside of a guy like Steph Curry is going to, have the ultimate of green lights tonight. But if I'm just targeting somebody down there, I'd rather go to him than Looney, because I do get worried about him with J-Val. And, he played 20 minutes against the Lakers. I would assume he would be out there for a couple more minutes, but he makes more sense as a flex guy for me. I just think Jordan Poole could possibly get really, really hot. And I kind of want to target him as my main captain right now.
Interesting. So something I did last night that I talked about is I still had a bunch of captain exposure last night to Westbrook and Sabonis. Then there was other guys that I mixed in. There was, and thankfully, Daniel Gafford was one of them. But that's kind of how I feel about today too. It's not that I'm going to be getting away from Steph entirely as the captain. One of the reasons being is we shockingly don't have him projected for that much ownership as the captain. Steph currently projected for 24.6% ownership as captain. That's shockingly low to me. Does that surprise you that he's only projected for that much ownership? Because that's something that really makes it not a big deal for me to play in the captain.
No, and I think it's going to end up being a little bit higher than that. I think that's probably, we're just seeing some of these chalkier guys end up coming up. It's so hard to be able to project some of this ownership. And I would assume maybe I'm overthinking it a little bit. Maybe this is the correct number right at 25%, but something tells me he's going to be closer to 35, 40 when it's all said and done. It is not that hard to build a lineup with him in it. And again, you're going to be splitting a lot of ways with just about anything with Steph that isn't leaving an uncomfortable amount of salary on the table, should I say, or has some really sketchy individual plays. But I'm just trying to find some different paths. If I were playing 150 today, I'm not playing 150. I would probably make sure that I had a majority of them with Steph Curry. But seeing as I'm building mostly 20 max stuff, I feel pretty good being a little bit lighter on it and kind of living with the result. But there's no question he's the best captain play. He's the optimal captain play. So I'm not going to knock it at all.
Yeah, although funny enough, actually, my lineup that I personally have projected for the most points doesn't have Steph Curry at captain.
Who does it have?
You can figure out pretty easily, I think, if you guess. I'll tell you if you got it.
Well, J-Val.
Yeah, it's Valanciunas.
Okay.
It's just because of the salary constraints. But yeah, I actually have Valanciunas as the optimal captain for me in my top projected lineup. But Steph Curry is in most of my other top lineups. But to me, those are the two guys who I think are most likely to be optimal. No real surprise there, but the ownership does seem a little bit low on them. And then something else that's really surprising here is Draymond Green actually projecting for the second most captain ownership on DraftKings, which I don't have an issue with Draymond Green overall. I just find it a little strange that people are that confident in Draymond Green to the point where they're rostering him over Valanciunas when considering that Valanciunas just went for a 2020 game in the last playing game. And the other thing to consider too, Valanciunas has always been a great points per minute fantasy producer. The concern has always been how many minutes is he going to play. We don't really have to worry about that in this situation. As long as he avoids foul trouble, Valanciunas is going to play big minutes. So Do you have a preference between Draymond Green and Valanciunas as a captain?
I don't really have a preference between the two. I'm lighter on both because they are the second and third highest owned captains, and I'm trying to build in ways where I'm not going to be duplicated nearly as much, and so I have to go a little bit lower. Basically, doing the exact opposite of what I would do for regular season building 150, where I'm not jamming in chalk everywhere. But again, Steph, Draymond, J-Val, all three phenomenal captains. The salary isn't that crazy, but I'm looking for a couple of events where, you know, if I can get different by building 4-2 with the four Memphis guys, I'm probably going to try to gear away from going too much J-Val in some of those. Again, I absolutely love the guy, as you said, 1.38 DraftKings points per minute on the season. And it is always a question. And now he's playing mid 30s minutes routinely. And every time he does, he just goes out and smashes. But there are some paths for me where I think just going a little bit cheaper and trying to play all of Steph, Draymond, and J-Val together, and then having a couple of different takes. And that's where I'm siding with a little bit of Jordan Poole. John Morant, I think, is just going way, way underowned as a captain, and somebody that I think maybe comes in a little bit higher than what we're getting him for. But considering he's getting projected for 41 minutes and he's coming in at right around 5% on DraftKings, so that's just wrong.
Yeah, so here's the deal with Morant, though. I have Steph, Valanciunas, Draymond Green, all projected for more fantasy points than Morant. There's a little bit of tiers to this also. Like, I think that Steph is in a tier of his own. I think Valanciunas is in a tier of his own. Then Draymond, I have slightly ahead of Morant. And then there's a pretty big drop-off before getting to Wiggins. Then there's another drop-off, and there's just a whole bunch of other guys. I actually don't think that the ownership is that far off from Morant, just because some of the other guys in this game, namely Steph Curry and Jonas Valanciunas, are much better fantasy producers than him. I agree the minutes are going to be there, but the minutes are going to be there for everybody else also. So what is it about Morant that you think is making him go under-owned? Or why do you think he should have more ownership?
So, I mean, just 1.13 DraftKings points per minute on the entire season, just in bulk. And 41 minutes, didn't play particularly well last time out. He was still fine, 37.5. It's just that he got so blocketed out by J-Val having a massive game that nobody's really looking at Morant. I think Kyle Anderson as well, somebody that's kind of going a little bit under-owned from a captain perspective, in my opinion. But I basically, in a lot of these showdowns, I love to capitalize on recency bias, and I think J-Val is appropriately owned. Like that's kind of the difference. Like, I think in terms of captain ownership, I think both him and Draymond, like, they should be double digit owned. Like, Draymond gets all of his fantasy points by doing things that have nothing to do with scoring the basketball and having a double bonus where he can go rebounds and assists. And he's just kind of a hybrid player that's a little bit cheaper than J-Val and can make things work in terms of some of the chalkier builds. But yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, J-Val just makes a lot of sense as the guy that you should be playing. But if John Morant's going to be less than half of his captain ownership, we know that there are multiple times in the playoffs last year as well, in the bubble, where he kind of went completely nuts and found paths to just keep the Grizzlies in this game. And if it's not going through J-Val, I mean, John Morant, he can get to the basket at will. I'm not worried about any Steph Curry defense or Jordan Poole or any team defense. Like, John Morant, it's just a question of him being able to finish at the rim. And I think he's going to be able to do that in this game. It's a great game environment for him. It's going to be moving up and down. So I think there's some hidden upside. I'm trying to, on FanDuel, switch a lot of star and pro where I'm going Morant, J-Val. I think that's one of the stands that I'm making today.
You know, it's funny. Talking about some of those players, we just get a question. I just got a question. Well, both of us did, but I was the one tagged on it from Legalized in our premium Slack chat. And this is a question what I think is funny about this. I've gotten asked the same exact question a handful of times today on Twitter, so I know what the exact lineups are that he's building. But he asked for FanDuel, Morant and Poole or Looney and Wiggins. That is Morant and Poole for me. But I know exactly what his lineup is. What is it for you, Morant and Poole or Looney and Wiggins?
Yeah, I'm going the Morant and Poole. I mean, those are the two guys. And so, I mean, I've been building over there all day. I've got, however many in that big tournament that they have going on. And it's pretty much all. I mean, that's going to be the question of the entire night, I think, in a lot of those builds. And then also where you group them. And I think putting Morant up in a star and trying to even like get Jordan Poole. I don't have much pro exposure with Jordan Poole there, but I think there's 30 plus fantasy point upside there if he gets hot. And that can be kind of a sneaky spot. So I think take that build and try to get different even within that build on FanDuel.
Yeah. So the issue is this also with this particular build. And Here's why also I think that ownership matters on single game slates way more than it does for just classic regular NBA DFS contests. I have been asked this question enough times today that if you are playing that Morant pool lineup, which by the way, it is the right answer for just looking at projections. The Looney Wiggins one was also both those lineups are going to be duped to hell today. You have no chance of coming a solo first with that lineup. You're splitting with like, I don't know, 3,000 people if that lineup is optimal.
And that's why I'm putting Poole in the pro. I think that that's a strange looking thing to do. But again, if he has that 1% outcome, I think that it's basically bypassing everybody else who's building that exact same lineup. And you're kind of hoping for everybody within it to go off anyway. So if Poole can find a way to 35 and everybody else can bottom to like 32, 31, that's a huge amount of leverage that can be had. And I think, I'm somebody who's risk averse enough. Like I can incur that risk. Like I can undertake that. So I have no problem going there.
All right. And we have another interesting question here from Swanson79. He's looking at some of the matchups here and he's saying, should he go double the field on Looney on DraftKings in the utility spot because there's nobody else to guard Valanciunas? So here's the issue I have with Looney. And yeah, maybe he plays extended minutes today, but he's already really popular. He's projected for 37% ownership overall today on DraftKings. So if you're going double the field, you're talking about having Kevon Looney in 3/4 of your lineup. That's a little much to me, especially because this is something that I'm pretty sure you've talked about before. And I know it's something that I've talked about also. There's such limited upside in Looney. He's somebody who scores right around 20 fantasy points just about every single game. So I know last time he went out, he was a little above that. Cool. He went out and he scored 27 fantasy points. But still, the overall upside for Looney is very limited. And he scored over 30 fantasy points. How many times would you guess he scored over 30 fantasy points this year?
Oh, I know because I've brought this up so many times on FanDuel. I'm guessing 0 is the answer.
It's 2, actually.
2. Okay. So it's better than I expected. He's been chalk on so many different FanDuel slates where it was like a 10 or 12 game slate and he was getting like 8-10%. And I just took him out of my player pool. And he's probably the easiest fade in those kind of scenarios that I've ever seen in my life because he was never at the min. He was always like around low 4Ks. But this is Showdown where you're kind of hoping for him to sneak in. And I think about, I don't even know what I would set the line at. I would say probably 40% of the time he does end up optimal in a flex in this spot, but I think that there's going to be such ownership there as a flex play that I think I'm happy kind of going different directions.
Yeah, and once again, Looney, does he maybe, back into a bunch of defensive stats? Potentially, but this is somebody who scores right around 20 fantasy points basically every single game. Here are his last handful of games. DraftKings points 19, 19.5, 21.5, 23.25, 17.75, 20, 23.75, 27.75. He's safe if you're playing a cash game and you have that much space left over, which by the way, I mean, if you're playing, like heavy cash games on Showdown slates, that's a little crazy in my opinion, but go out, go crazy. That's where Looney, I think, profiles best. But I mean, in terms of tournaments, it's really hard to see a realistic upside. Basically what you need for Looney to be optimal based on what we've seen out of his box scores this year is you just need the other guys priced around to all suck because he's not going to have the upside on his own.
So can I ask you this then? Because I think this is a fun way of looking at it, bringing it back to Yahoo. Out of the $10 players, so we've got Looney there. D'Anthony Melton's a guy that I'm landing on a lot at the $10 spot because he at least, at 12 minutes. I think that there's a little bit of upside for more there. Desmond Bane, I think, is going to be pretty popular down there. As well, because he played the 25 minutes. Kevon Looney, like, who are you really kind of going to? Like, Jordan Poole at $10 is by far my favorite of the $10 players, and it's not remotely close. I'm kind of making that a big stand of mine. But who else down there are you kind of like considering, or do you think has the upside to pass Looney? I would say that like from just looking at it from like what I'm talking about, like Poole and then Bane would be your two main ones.
I don't know about Bane, just because I don't think the minutes are going to be significant enough. But it's Poole by a mile, especially now that we have Damian Lee out. Which, by the way, actually, it was Poole for me even before Damian Lee was ruled out. Now that we don't have Damian Lee, and now it's just Poole by a mile for me. And the other thing too is, let's say you really want to get wacky and fade Steph Curry. Maybe you're playing for a Curry injury or something like that. Then that's a spot where I guess you go out and play Jordan Poole. But yeah, I think without Damian Lee there, we're going to see a fairly significant role for Jordan Poole.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to find different $10 paths from these guys and mixing and matching. I think Michael Mulder is an easy stay away. Like, he played the 22 minutes. He's getting much higher owned over on DraftKings, I think, than probably what he should. But I get it, because he's really the only play down there that received any kind of meaningful minutes. I mean, you had an 8-man rotation in essence. Well, actually, just flat out 8-man rotation for Golden State. You had a 6-man rotation basically for the Grizzlies. They had 4 players that all played underneath 12 minutes. So maybe you're right. Maybe just kind of avoiding all of those 4 dudes for Memphis. Do you think Grayson Allen has any kind of a minutes upside whatsoever, coming off of, his first game back in forever, only played 6? Like, if he's like, hey, I feel so much better today, I could play 15 today.
No, I didn't. I mean, if he starts, then maybe I would change my mind on that. But although I assume we have starting lineups, right?
Yeah, I think I saw those come through earlier. I think nothing surprised me. Nope, we don't have them. I'm looking at it now.
All right. So, I mean, if he starts, sure, but I don't think that's going to be the case. He only played 5 minutes last game. I only project him for 5 minutes this game. He also is somebody who's generally not a great fantasy producer. So this year in the regular season, he's made 38 starts. In those games, 26 minutes per game, 20.59 DraftKings points. It's somebody who certainly, if he's going to come off the bench, just not enough upside there. He's not a good points from a fantasy producer. And given how limited minutes he played last game, it's hard for me to expect him to get there.
Okay.
Do you feel any differently about that? Did you play?
No, I do. I think he's very, 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 very risky. And I think that it's one of those things where I'm not a doctor. I'm not a trainer. I don't know what his role would be if he was 100% healthy in this spot. But most of the time when he's been 100% healthy, he's been a meaningful part of the rotation as of like 2-3 months ago. But in a do or die game, a guy who's probably maybe at 75, 80% or so, like, yeah, he's not going to go out there and play a bunch of meaningful minutes. But if you're looking for one guy to go pull a Cassius Stanley and play 12 minutes, 14 minutes, knock down a couple threes, like, I think I'd be more willing to take a shot on Grayson Allen than I would be Xavier Tillman for sure. More likely to take a shot on him than Gary Payton II. That's hilarious to me, but that's a little inside joke. We'll move on.
No, what are your takes on Gary Payton II for the slate?
Don't play him. How about that? How about that? He's with the team. That's exciting.
Yeah, he was with the team last time. Also, he just wasn't active.
That's true.
All right, so no Gary Payton for Eric on this slate. It would certainly be a contrarian play, but not quite this time. But hey, if you guys want to see some of the top plays and some of our tools at Awesemo, which, by the way, Gary Payton II won't be a part of it. Gary Payton I won't be a part of it. Gary Payton III won't be a part of it. You can go sign up using the promo code. I kind of combine 2 words together.
You deserve that after that.
The promo
this is what happens
code.
when people make fun of me. Is karma's a thing. There it is. Go ahead.
I think it's just the combination of words, promo code, and then also gold after it. Yesterday when Spags came on, he was doing the promo read with me, and he had his pigtails. He spelled gold wrong. I don't even remember how he spelled it, but he spelled it incorrectly the first time. But anyway, promo code Gold Rush. That will get you 25% off an Awesemo Plus monthly pass. And also, this is going to be the last day to check that out. And then also something else that's the last day to check out is we have an NBA play-in special running that is through today. Gives you a 2-week access to our NBA Express Pass that is for $4.95. So Gold Rush, if you want to get the monthly premium pass for 25% off. And then for the NBA Express Pass, $4.95 for the NBA play-in special. So check out either of those. You can see all of our tools, and you can see all the players that project well. Like I said, one of them is not going to be Gary Payton II, but never fear, because there are other players in there who are going to come out looking like good plays. But anyway, back to this slate now. Here's one of the ways that I think is actually a pretty decent way to differentiate a little bit. Something I like to do personally on some of these showdown slates is leave salary on the table. It's something I don't have an issue with. I think that the trio of Dillon Brooks, Kyle Anderson, and Jaren Jackson Jr. are fairly similar as plays, but Kyle Anderson is the cheapest of the 3. And I think a lot of people are going to make lineups, and if they have the salary on the table, they're just going to go from Kyle Anderson up to one of those other guys. I think it's perfectly reasonable to leave, like $600 on the table to go from Jaren Jackson to Kyle Anderson and just differentiate yourself a little bit. That's how I'm viewing those guys in the mid-range. Kyle Anderson is my preference for that reason. He does have a little more ownership than the other guys, but I think that the leaving salary on the table will offset that a little bit. So those mid-tier Grizzlies players, how do you feel about them?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. It becomes an ownership question, and I keep refreshing it, keep looking at it. I have all my lineups in right now, but I'm planning to upload a new CSV here at some point, just to kind of account for whatever the newest ownership ends up being as we're getting closer to lock. But I feel pretty darn confident that it is impossible to discern which one of the three out of that grouping is really the one that's going to go off. I know that Alex talked about liking Jaren Jackson Jr. I think that that's an important part of my lineups as well. I have no problem making it Kyle Anderson as well. I always get worried about slow-mo and I never get him right, so that's unfortunate. But I think that on a showdown, every single player is in play. And so it really just becomes like, how are you going to leverage your lineups, or where are the stands you really have? And I don't really have a strong stand on any of them out of that mid-range outside of just shorting Dillon Brooks. I'm going to be so light on Dillon Brooks. That's kind of the stand I took last night. He will be on the floor a bunch. He's going to play a lot of minutes. He's going to get a bunch of opportunity. I'm just hoping that coming off of the last game, he doesn't go completely nuts and murder me. 43.25 DraftKings points over on DK last game up against San Antonio. If he can just keep that around 30, I think the other two have much more upside and at cheaper tags.
Yeah, so
Jaren Jackson's more expensive, excuse me.
Here's the concern I have with Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks thinks the best player on the Memphis Grizzlies is Dillon Brooks. So there's a positive and a negative to that from a fantasy standpoint. For starters, he's going to be taking a ton of shots. Like, he has no lack of confidence.
Marcus Smart syndrome.
Yeah, he's like he's a souped up version kind of J.R. Smith, like old J.R. Smith.
That's
sharp. Like he wasn't particularly good anymore, but he was still like, hey, I'm touching the ball. These guys need me to shoot. So he's kind of in that Nick Young slash J.R. Smith role. Sometimes he makes the shots and it leads to good results. He's actually been good more often than not recently. But if you look at his box scores for the entire season down the stretch of the regular season, he's just alternating games where it's like, hey, 36 fantasy points, 14 fantasy points, 39 fantasy points, 18 fantasy points. So to me, the field, it's a single game slate. So the field's always going to be on him to some extent. But to me, after he had a pretty big game last time out, I think he's going a little bit over-owned right now. We have him right around 30% ownership. I'd rather be a little bit underweight to the field. I'd rather get to guys like Jaren Jackson Jr. and Kyle Anderson, all kind of in the same ownership range, just because there's so much variance to Dillon Brooks. I feel like he's somebody you want to be on him when the field isn't, and you want to be off him when the field's on him. So that's really where I stand there.
I think that's very sharp. I mean, coming off of a big game too. I mean, it's a recency bias thing. I don't think his ownership would be nearly where it is had he not just played really, really well last time out. And that's kind of reflected. I mean, he's not higher owned than Wiggins. Like, Dillon Brooks is still under 25%. So there's that. But like, I still think at his price where he's at this point in time, you can't play everybody in the exact same way. Like, you're going to have Dillon Brooks show up in some flexes if you're going to make 40. I'm making 60 lineups on DK, and I have a couple that are going to have a minute by default. You're going to play a little bit of everybody that's going to be on the floor in a showdown. But in terms of making a stand, I am going to be significantly lower than the field still, because I do have those same concerns.
All right, so I have to shout out producer Jordan Klein right now, because he said something hilarious in the chat that I was trying really hard not to laugh while you were talking. He's saying after the haircut you got, he's saying you look like Woj. And I think it's also the combination. It's the glasses. No, you do look a little bit like Woj, and it is absolutely hilarious. I'm sure other people have to agree, because I can't not see it now. You have the same face as Woj.
I don't even know what to say to this right now. Is this a thing? Can we get a confirmed side by side? You love your side by sides, or do I need to like have my phone out and hit the mic with the phone? Hopefully that's fine. Do I need to like read something off? Do I need to like read a mock trade as if this is the deadline, and then we can decide from there?
Yeah, I mean, let's have Woj could read the ownership in a second. First, Jordan, try to get the side by side of the picture, and then we're gonna have Woj report on the most rostered players on DraftKings and FanDuel.
Okay, let's do that. So side by side, it's coming up. I'm going to delay it for 5 seconds. We've got 5, 4. So the Minnesota Timberwolves have traded the first selection to the Golden State Warriors. So that we have 67.1% Steph Curry, Draymond Green, 48%. He's getting traded along with Jonas Valanciunas, or going to Memphis for Jonas Valanciunas, who's at 41.4%. Kyle Anderson, 38%. Andrew Wiggins, 36%. We're going to throw Jaren Jackson in with cash considerations, considering they're both 36%. How How was that? I don't know.
Hey, listen, Woj loves the chalk, and somebody in the chat mentioned these are the chalk bombs. I love it. This is Woj giving out the chalk bombs. Also, that's just a convergence of so many things. We've got Eric reading out we've got chalk Eric, who's also now Woj Eric, who's also reading off chalk bombs. So let's go to FanDuel. Oh, Woj, how about the MVP Woj, that's going to be pretty obvious with Steph Curry is the most popular MVP, even the star. A lot of people are going to Valanciunas, but I think what is going to make or break a lot of lineups tonight, Woj, who are the most rostered players in the pro spot tonight on FanDuel?
So in the pro spot, we've got Andrew Wiggins sitting there at 12.6%. Draymond Green coming in at 12%. John Morant, 11.4%. Jaren Jackson Jr., 11.4%. And rounding it out in the pro, kind of a contrarian coming down there because he's being rostered so much in the star. He ends up being the highest MVP out of the Memphis Grizzlies, but one, Jonas Valanciunas.
I like it. Woj, I think good job reporting.
Thank you.
You had the information in front of you and you read it perfectly. No complaints from me. Something is a little surprising that Steph Curry as the 6th most rostered pro spot. I don't even know how that lineup would have any. I mean, obviously weird things happen, but I mean, where Steph Curry ends up being the 3rd highest scoring player on the slate, don't see that as a very likely outcome.
Turned ankle halfway through the 3rd quarter. That's the only outcome I got. I'm not calling out his injury. Don't do that, Jordan. Don't give me those eyeballs. So we have the producer behind the screen. He has this. So he's never like in frame, but all you ever see is him react to you go when you say something that's like borderline. Steph Curry's going to be fine. He's not going to get hurt today. Not going to.
Yeah. No, I think if you're trying to build showdown lineups for injuries, I think that's a step too far. Especially
the best play on the entire slate.
Yeah, I mean, we see that in NFL Showdown. There's always people who will go and build, showdown lineups with the backup quarterback just in case, and it works like once every, I don't know, 2 seasons or something like that, and then it becomes like a popular thing to do. Like we've done NFL Showdown games together where people will come in and ask like, oh, should I roster a backup quarterback? The answer is always no, and this is kind of a similar situation.
Yeah, absolutely not. The famous Baker Mayfield situation where who was that? Was that Tyrod Taylor? Was he the guy in Cleveland who was the starting quarterback at that period in time? And then Baker Mayfield came in the second half and was the optimal captain. I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly. Somebody can put in the chat. They'll correct me. They have special ways of doing it. Oh my good God. Oh no. That's actually much closer than what I was expecting it to be. I'm not happy right now. Oh my dear God.
Yeah. So, I mean,
holy shit.
It's really the glasses. Cause I think you and Woj go to the same optometrist.
Oh God. Yeah. I apparently I have to. I don't know what to say. That's thank you so much, Yahoo, for sponsoring this, this episode of the trade deadline. We are very excited to bring the playoffs to you. I will make sure you stay updated with all breaking news that, nobody's making any trades. It doesn't matter.
Do you have any promo codes to report to us, Woj?
I'll let you do that because you've got it in front of you here, and I've got Yahoo's screen because I'm continuing to build lineups because I'm a gleeful Woj. It's the chalk bomb.
I was trying to play into the bit a little bit, but I wasn't sure if you had it in front of you. I understand, Woj. I put you on the spot a little bit. I mean, okay. Why would I Woj shouldn't have he's an unexpected guest. I really shouldn't have put him on the spot like that. But yeah, guys, use the promo code Awesemo10. And that'll get you some free Yahoo points, their free money system. If you make a deposit of at least $5, use the promo code Awesemo10. Get yourself some Yahoo rewards points in there that you can use to enter some contests. So Awesemo10, and then also we have a free roll tonight. If you look at the $1,000 Awesemo free roll on Yahoo, go check that out. And then there's also a NBA 5K single game contest, 1K to first, and that is sponsored by us. And I'm not sure if that's full or not at this point. Woj, could you report on if it's full or not? I don't know. Do you have that information from you?
It's full. The main iteration is the 1600 is full right now. Going to the lobby here, we've got 295. We've got 805, 295 are in there right now for the new iteration of the $7. The $15 right now is almost full. You've got 40 spots left there. So there's still some goodies to be had here. I'm going to enter a couple more in this $7, but what's really nice about playing over here is you don't have the massive 100,000 plus field size for some of these. And the main tournament, you can still get that I believe they still have it so you can get that MGM getaway going to Vegas, because that sounds like fun. And now that I'm double vaccinated, I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to head to Vegas on an MGM dime.
All right, and we do have a couple of super chats here to answer, and we'll direct these to Eric instead of Woj. I'm a little concerned if we have too much Woj on the show. He's got inside information. Woj probably knows the Final Fantasy points for all the players in this game already. But I got our guy Charles. By the way, these slates built for Charles, because Charles is always playing Showdown anyway, and usually, we've got a 12-game slate, and Charles is playing like the 7:30 Showdown, one of them now. He's playing Showdown with the rest of us. He's well prepared for this. But Charles says, hey, I'm doing a small field tonight, 25 entries. Best way to get different. I have Steph as captain, struggling to pick someone different from Mulder or Looney. All right, if you're playing a small field tournament, only 25 people, no reason to get different. Play Mulder.
Yep, play Mulder. Play the guy that's down there that's actually going to play minutes. Sitting at 2,200, you've got to go that direction.
All right, and from JC, he's playing a FanDuel head-to-head tonight. His highest projected lineup doesn't have Valanciunas in it. Seems like a mistake. What do you think? I agree. That seems like a mistake to me. So especially for a head-to-head where you're trying to capture as much floor as possible, the two no-brainer plays that are going to be Steph Curry and Jonas Valanciunas.
Yeah, absolute no-brainers. And then also, maybe this is just me, but I think Jordan Poole at 7,500 is kind of a no-brainer for your utility. So I think it should have Steph Curry MVP, Jonas Valanciunas should be your star. And then, you have Poole, you have Mulder down there too, but I just think Poole just has such a guaranteed role to actually have some usage, played 26 minutes, 7,500. He fits in well with what I have for like what the optimal cash build would be, but I'm not playing cash.
All right. And we haven't really talked about many of the value plays yet. We've kind of been cruising along at a good pace here. We found some bits to fill the time as I knew was going to happen. We didn't have to plan this. Producer Jordan doing a fantastic job pitching in the background today. But I saw some people questioning Mulder, trying to figure out why we would like him as a play today. So I have him as the cheapest player who's going to get minutes today. And I actually project him somewhat decently relative to this slate, because if we look at the injury situation that the Warriors are dealing with Damian Lee out, I think we could expect that Mulder's going to have to play significant minutes off the bench. He's very cheap on DraftKings. And then also he played, was it 24 minutes last game? 22 minutes last game. So with that in mind, I think that we could fairly safely say that Mulder's going to play somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 minutes again. And just at the price point he is at, it opens up a whole lot of salary flexibility to be able to go to other guys. I know for large field tournaments, Eric, you were a little skeptical on Mulder, but what's your overall take on him?
Exactly that. Like if I'm depending on the field size, like I would have my exposure go up to Mulder as I got like underneath 1,000 entries. I would probably be more comfortable playing him. It's so easy to plug and play him. If you're playing Steph and captain, getting to a little bit of Mulder is probably going to happen no matter what. There's really no way around it, because you want to play J-Val, you want to play Draymond, you want to play Morant. You're going to play all those guys in the flex as well. And the path to doing it is playing a guy like Mulder all the way down at the basement. So as you said, he's the only guy in the basement on DraftKings that's really going to be getting any kind of meaningful minutes. That's the other fun part about Yahoo, is that at $10, you're able to play an array of different players. You don't necessarily have to go to the basement, and there's no tournaments that have over 1,500 entries that are taking place today. I mean, the $1,600 one or 1,600 entry one is the highest entry tournament that they have going with any kind of like massive prize pool. So being over on Yahoo and being able to mix and match those $10 players is a lot more fun, because then you don't have to play Michael Mulder or worry about it whatsoever.
All right, we do have another question here from a couple guys actually asking the same exact question. Kent Bazemore or Juan Toscano-Anderson, which one for you is the higher priority play? It is, I have these guys projected so ridiculously closely.
0.7 for me.
Yeah, it is. They are very similar. Let's see. It is slightly Kent Bazemore, but I mean, we are just really not much of a difference. Let's see. Is there a difference in ownership between them?
Yeah. So I have 0.7 more on Bazemore, but I actually have more Juan Toscano-Anderson over on DraftKings. And basically, Kent Bazemore played 25 minutes last time out. He's got upside to knock down shots here. And Juan Toscano-Anderson, he played 26 minutes, only put up 20.5. But I think Toscano-Anderson, if they're going to go a little bit smaller with J-Val off the floor in some of these times, like Toscano-Anderson and Draymond are going to be sharing the floor, going that direction. I don't know. I think this sets up pretty well for Toscano Anderson to be a little bit more effective. And also, he's $600 less. And so I'm leaving salary on the table in a lot of these lineups. I think if you zero out your salary with Bazemore, just going to Toscano Anderson is probably a nice way to get a little bit of leverage and avoid as many duplicates.
Listen, Juan Toscano Anderson and Ken Bazemore both said we have them projected extremely similar. Their ownership for tonight: Juan Toscano Anderson, 26.9%. Ken Bazemore, 26% on DraftKings. Listen, if you have a gut feeling on one of them and you're just like, I think this guy's going to be better than the other guy, go with it. I don't think it makes a difference, really. I mean, obviously, at the end of the night, there's a chance it's going to make somewhat of a difference. But as of right now, these guys look like the exact same play to me.
Same.
Let's see. We haven't hit on yet. Let's go with, I know you had mentioned earlier, you went with Jordan Poole as your contrarian captain play. Is there anybody else as a contrarian captain play that you like, or would you just like to reiterate Jordan Poole for maybe the people who weren't watching at the top of the show?
Yeah, I'm happy to reiterate that. So Jordan Poole, he's sitting down there a little bit cheaper at 8,100 is how much you're using up at the captain over on DraftKings. I think over on Yahoo, it makes sense to play him in the star. I think I'm doing a little bit of that over on FanDuel as well. I'm not saying that he's going to for sure be the guy that I want to have a ton of exposure. I just think that there's more of a path than what his ownership at that spot is going to come in at. He's somebody that just can knock down a bulk of threes. If he gets hot, he could see a little bit of extra meaningful run here. When you're talking about picking hairs between Bazemore and Toscano Anderson, I just like Poole straight out a little bit more than both. I think that there's more upside that can exist if somebody's going to get hot from three. And pretty much every single minute that Steph Curry's off the floor, which might be all of 5 tonight, I think you're going to probably have Poole out there just chucking. So I'm happy to take a shot on his upside. He's very, very cheap down there comparatively. He's a cheaper captain than what Bazemore or Toscano Anderson is down there, and he's got lower captain ownership. So I think it checks every box to be a great tournament pivot on a small, obviously one single game slate.
All right. So for me, my answer is going to be Jaren Jackson Jr. I mean, we just look at a guy who's an excellent points per minute fantasy producer, and the minutes haven't always been there this year, except it's because he had the meniscus surgery in the offseason. He came back. The Grizzlies were extremely cautious with him. But I mean, I don't think they're going to be cautious with him at this point in the season as long as he avoids foul trouble. So 32 minutes for him 2 games ago, 31 minutes last game. If you look at his numbers overall for the season, 24 minutes per game and right around 28 DraftKings points. So, I mean, with that in mind, Jaren Jackson Jr., I think that he is somebody who we could definitely see, if he's playing extended minutes, get to a pretty lofty fantasy total. Like, it would not have been crazy last year on classic slates to see Jaren Jackson priced around the 7,000 range. So to me, I look at Jaren Jackson as one of the highest upside players on this slate. It just becomes a question of, what version of him shows up. Is he going to be the guy who is his weird looking 3-point shot is actually dropping, or is it going to be the guy who gets in foul trouble 2 minutes into the game? But that kind of variance, I like the upside because he's still somebody I view as a very talented player.
Yeah, and if he can finally get up past 31 minutes here, if he can get to like 34, 35, that would be fantastic. An ugly looking 3-pointer, I guess. I mean, that's because he's shooting 28% on the year this year. Absolutely been abysmal from three, but for a career, right around 37%. So I think probably a guy who does have some hidden upside compared to what the field has him at. So I like that call a lot too.
By the way, we do have the starting lineups now for both teams. The Memphis Grizzlies: Morant, Brooks, Anderson, Triple J, Jonas Valanciunas. The Warriors: Steph Curry, Andrew Wiggins, Kent Bazemore, Draymond Green, and Kevon Looney. So no real surprises there. Pretty much what we were expecting. So that's going to change absolutely nothing for me, but it's good to have those confirmed lineups ahead of time. So it's not something like you had mentioned earlier where it's also like, oh my God, is Grayson Allen starting? Because
Bismack Biyombo.
Yeah.
Bismack Biyombo. Let's pour one out for Bismack.
Yeah, Bismack Biyombo starts, plays 3 minutes. There's gonna be none of that today.
It's brutal. God, that was the worst. All right, now I'm sad. Make me happy. All
right, we got a question here from Swanson79. He's saying, can Mulder be a complete DK fade? He says he thinks the ownership is a little bit too high. Listen, it depends how many lineups you're making. If you're playing a bunch of lineups, you're playing 0% Mulder, I think that's a mistake. If you're playing 20 lineups and you're underweight to the field on him, that's personally not something I am doing, but I think that's a reasonable stance to take. I actually think that the 28.6% ownership for him should be a little bit higher based on how I have him projected, and then just the lack of other options in his price range. But would you feel comfortable with the 0% of Mulder?
I would be more comfortable with 0 than 50. If that's, I think that's probably a better way of bringing it up. Again, I have 16 lineups. I have 16% of him, so I'm lower than him to the field. part of it is that I'm not rostering a bunch of Steph. If I were rostering a bunch of Steph and captain the same way that Greg is and the same way the field is, and again, I think 25% is low. For whatever reason, something tells me that that number is going to be higher if I'm looking at this the right way. It just feels like it's going to be closer to 35, 40% because it's too easy to build with Steph in the captain. And so just going with my gut there, I'm lighter on Mulder as a result because I'm going other directions at the captain spot.
All right, guys. And if you have any questions, definitely feel free to fire them in. Somebody who we have not yet talked about. And to me, he's somebody, I mean, he's picking up a decent amount of ownership, but he kind of gets lost in my lineups a little bit, is Andrew Wiggins. And he's just kind of in this price range for me where I find it really hard to get to him when Valanciunas, Draymond Green, Steph Curry are all guys that I project for a lot more fantasy points, and Morant also. But it's just where his price is. It gets a little awkward to me, and I guess that's the reason I'm just not really getting to him a whole bunch in the optimizer when I'm building lineups. But how high of a priority was Wiggins for you?
Wiggins isn't a guy I'm captaining a bunch. I am a little bit over the field in the utility spot. I think he's going to have a tough time really kind of like being the guy here in the playoffs. He had 18 shot attempts, so it was nifty there, but rebounds and assists, I think you're going to see a lot of those kind of come down. He's not really needed in those kind of departments. His rebound rate's actually been a little bit better than what it would have shown against the Lakers there, but Andrew Wiggins has turned into a pretty good individual defender. And so if we're going to talk about that narrative with Dillon Brooks, I think it goes back to the other direction too, where Wiggins is going to be on Brooks and it's going to be a battle between those two. Like Wiggins defensively looked really good against the Lakers. I know he got that 3 knocked in his face by LeBron, but like for the most part, Andrew Wiggins was really all over everybody in that game and has been all season long, been a great individual defensive performer for the Warriors, kind of an unsung part of his basketball game back in his days with the Timberwolves. Definitely gets in some of these battles and as a guy that, he isn't the number one pick that we all expected him to be by any means, but he's still a pretty darn good basketball player and kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So I'm a little bit over on the flex, not a ton of him in the captain on DraftKings and on Yahoo. It's just kind of a weird price point to get to him because if you're playing Steph and J-Val, it's really hard to be able to jam him in and fit Curry or fit Draymond or anybody else. So I'm getting to less of him over there.
Yeah. And then, I mean, in terms of Wiggins' upside, we've seen, some individual games where he's gone off, but on the whole, it's not like he's some crazy upside fantasy player. We see, like maybe once every couple of weeks, he'll pop off for over 40 fantasy points. But the other thing also that's significant here about Wiggins is his minutes have nowhere to go up. We saw him play massive minutes all throughout the regular season. Whereas if you look at some of the other guys in this price range, like Valanciunas being a really notable example, one of the issues with Valanciunas that I said at the top of the show during the regular season, at least from his fantasy production, was that he only played 28 and a half minutes per game. So every once in a while you get over 30 minutes from Valanciunas, but sometimes you get 24 minutes. Valanciunas might legitimately play 40 minutes tonight. And that kind of playing time for him would just crush the expected outcome for Andrew Wiggins because Valanciunas is such a better points per minute fantasy producer. Wiggins played, let's see, how many minutes did he play in the regular season? It was already a very significant number. Yeah, he played 33 and a half minutes per game in the regular season. So even if we're going to say that he plays, 38 minutes or something like that, that's a way different situation than if you give Valanciunas the same amount of minutes as him.
There's a fun question I just saw in chat here. Sorry, I'm just kind of like picking and choosing stuff. So sorry if I don't get to everybody here, but what do you think about Wiggins at the star spot on FanDuel? Because he's actually coming in with the 4th most ownership there. And I think that's flat out, like, I think it makes sense, but I would just much rather be over the field on J-Val and Draymond Green than try to like be at the field with Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah. So one thing that's funny about that is a lot of times I'll get questions from people on Twitter. Will it be like, hey, what do you think of this or this? And I'll tell them to change something. And they'll always insist that something's a lock. And that was something that somebody had said to me today. Said Andrew Wiggins is a lock to be the best scorer in the pro spot. I was like, all right, I disagree. But I think that is something we see a lot is people will get married to a certain player in a spot. And I think a lot of people feel that way about Wiggins. Maybe that's just the ease of the way the lineups are constructed on FanDuel. But he is the most rostered player right now in the pro spot. And I think that is the way a lot of the field is going to go. So yeah, I think one of the ways to differentiate, even if you pay down, like Jaren Jackson Jr., particularly on FanDuel because of the defensive stat upside, if we get 34, 35 minutes out of Jaren Jackson Jr., we've seen it with massive defensive stat games. It's not out of the question that he goes out and has like 3 steals and 3 blocks or something like that. So I think that leaving salary on the table to get from Wiggins to Triple J, I think that's a pretty good way to differentiate a little bit.
Sharp.
Yeah, but other than that, let's see, we've got 4 minutes left. So let's take some people's questions. Because we definitely have talked about every individual player, I think, at this point. I don't think any stone was left unturned. Is there any, here's one more thing we actually hit on. Is there anybody at the bottom of the barrel, any of these guys who are, like 5% owned that you think is any chance of having upside outside of a blowout situation?
I said Grayson Allen, and this is just, it's more of a feeling that if he's actually like, if he was being held back, and I was trying to find on Twitter today, there's not really a whole lot. They're like, yeah, Grayson Allen, we're just easing him in, doing whatever else. Like if he's maybe a good to go kind of dude in this spot, like maybe he can get to like 10, 12 minutes as opposed to the 5 that he was at. I think that there's enough where maybe he can be the guy that if you're going to just do a direct pivot off of like Mulder and X player, as opposed to like going Grayson and somebody else kind of in that mid range, I think there's a spot where like, if he can end up out producing him, the big problem with doing that is that like Allen is still at 5,400. And so you're basically having to bypass, well, it's actually only Mulder over on DraftKings. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing in one of my 3 main lineups that I have is I'm just basically taking a stand where it's like, all right, maybe Grayson Allen gets to 10 minutes, 12 minutes here in this spot, and he outperforms Mulder because that would be kind of the guy with this other piece where it works out salary wise. And I just basically swapped it to another one of those comparable dudes where we talked about Dillon Brooks, Kyle Anderson, and Jaren Jackson Jr. just being so tightly knit and so close in projections. Took the cheapest of them and paired them with Grayson Allen instead.
By the way, guys, definitely go join the Awesemo single entry contest on Yahoo. That looks like it's going to have some overlay, so recommend going to check that out. And the other thing here, we do have a super chat here from Adine, who's saying, bedtime, old man. Hey, listen, Eric's on the West Coast. It's still early by him. I'm going to be watching this basketball game, but after that, I will most likely be going. I can't remember the last time I stayed up like ridiculously late at night for anything. Like that was something. It
does not shock me with you, actually. Now that I know you so well, you love sleep. You love clocking out at 6 p.m., 9 p.m. your time. There's nothing that you love more than just hitting that timeout button on the timesheet and moving on with your day.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And I'm a little nervous. It looks like, okay, never mind, he's back. I thought Jordan went to the bathroom or something. I was like, oh my God, we have to kill extra time for him to end the stream here. But all right, so we do have a minute left until the slate lock. So, Eric, let's close with this. Who is the player most likely to end your night?
Jordan Poole.
Jordan Poole? Yeah, that's reasonable enough take. For me, it's probably Dillon Brooks, mostly because we've seen that a lot of variance and upside from him before. So I don't particularly like Dillon Brooks relative to how much the field likes him today. If he goes out and scores 40 fantasy points, that would not surprise me in the least, especially Dillon Brooks go out. He could shoot 8 of 23 from the field. He's going to keep firing up shots. So he's the guy who I'm least confident in not getting a lot of exposure to. And that was how I felt the other day also. And that didn't go all that well on that particular night. But all right, guys, if you haven't done so already, go sign up for Awesemo. Go sign up for Yahoo using the promo code Awesemo10. Make your first deposit, get yourself some Yahoo rewards points. That'll get you some money or rewards points to enter some contests. So that's something to definitely check out. Make a deposit of at least $5. Beyond that, promo code Gold Rush, get 25% off a platinum pass for Awesemo.com. Other than that, Eric, closing thoughts. Bring us home today.
Oh, this hour flew. I can't believe how fast this went. I'm excited. It's the fiance's birthday weekend here, so we're heading down to Newport Beach. Yeah, we're gonna have some fun. But otherwise, everybody, just good luck. Go Warriors, because money is a thing.
All right, that is going to do it for us tonight. And guys, go follow at Eric Lindquist, the burner account for Adrian Wojnarowski.